Welcome to our study in the book of Daniel. I'm Dick Baker, your teacher, and today we have a special insert session and lesson concerning Darius the Mede. This drops in between chapter 5 and chapter 6 of Daniel, and you'll see where I've placed that and why as we get underway. Here is Daniel 5, and these are the last verses of that chapter. This has been the handwriting on the wall, and Daniel has been able to not just read it, but to say what it is and what it meant. And unfortunately for Belshazzar, his kingdom was over as well as his life. In verse 30, in that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain. And notice now in verse 31, Now there's a change of empire. The Babylonian one is fading and gone, and now the Mede-Persian one is going to be taking front and center. And so it says, verse 31, and Darius the Mede took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. So he was 62 years old. Now, who is Darius the Mede? And that is the big question. You have Cyrus alive, Persian, and you have Darius the Mede, the Persian Mede Empire. Okay, Darius the Mede ruled from 539, and that's the year we're in, with the death of Belshazzar, and lived, and he reigned until they die usually. So he was on the throne from 539 to 525. He overlapped with the rule of Cyrus the Great, who was a Persian from 539 and to 530 BC. He is not Darius the Great that ruled a few years later by himself over the entire empire. He was a Persian from 522 to 486 before Christ. And I've just mentioned that to you, but keep that away and out of the equation. Most people look at the rulers during the life of Daniel, and they come and they pick the four big ones, and there were four. And of course, they grabbed Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar from the Babylonian ones, and then Cyrus the Great, and then down the timeline after him and a few other kings, rather insignificant in history, up pops Darius the Great. All right, it's not Darius the Great. All right, many scholars identify Darius the Mede as Darius the Mede Gubaru, and he was the leading general in Cyrus's army, who led the forces into Babylon. And so here you have Cyrus, who is a major player and really the leader of the army and the head of it, and he's going to be the king. However, there is with the Medes, who the Persians needed their army. That's why it's the Mede-Persian Empire, the Persian Mede Empire. It's two empires, two groups of nations, of peoples that get together. Neither one alone could have defeated Babylon. And so they together will share in the spoils, in this case, who runs the country. And so there's very good chance. Now, scholars, this is probably the leading answer to who Darius the Mede is and his background. And no one is willing to die over this, but it seems he gets the most votes. I'll just use it that way. So here's a chart, and you see the blue arrow, and I've color-coded these. Here's the blue arrow of Cyrus the Persian, Cyrus the Great, 539 to 530. After him ruled in 530 was Cambyses the second, and he killed himself. And then look down below, though. We have two kings ruling and co-ruling an empire. There's Darius the Mede, Gubaru, and that's the question mark. That is the name of the general, and that was probably Darius the Mede. And he ruled a little bit longer. So when Darius the Mede's reign is over, there really isn't anybody. And either that or the transition has become so great, or the Persians have become so powerful that the Persians just continue to rule. And the Medes dropped off by the wayside, because we really don't see any other Mede rulers and kings. So you can see where it's going on. Now, between Cyrus, there was only one king. There was 8 years difference between that and Darius the Great. You say, well, why couldn't this have been Darius the Great, where the red arrow is? Okay, I'll show you what we think. But let's look at the map first of all. Who's ruling where? Well, this is the whole empire now. And we find that Darius, as we get into chapter 6, that he is the one that divides up the empire into 127 provinces and appoints satraps over them. And these are like governors over that range. And then there's 3 presidents, and Daniel will become the top one, and eventually run the top down. So the blue arrow points to where the Medes are, and we know that Babylon is where the Babylonians and Nebuchadnezzar and the other kings ruled from there. It is at Shushan or Susa. And do you see a little bit in between the 2 arrows? Ecbatana. One is the winter palace and one is a summer palace. So they would rule from these places, which all of a sudden now it makes it very feasible, because the Chaldeans are all around the area down by the Persian Gulf. Do you remember Ur of the Chaldees? Abraham came out of there. And so the Chaldeans were already down in this area where the red arrow points. So my educated guess tells me that out of Shushan or Susa is where Darius the Mede is, and Cyrus might be there. Maybe they flip, or maybe they just, I don't know what they would have done. But they both were rulers, both were kings. Remember the part of Daniel's prophecy to Belshazzar, Daniel 5:28. This backs up just about 4 verses before we end. Perez is one of the words on the handwriting on the wall, and it's the interpretation as it says this: Belshazzar, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians, meaning your kingdom is going to have, now it's going to have a Mede ruler and a Persian ruler. Babylon would be split and have dual kings. Cyrus the Persian was probably the number 1. There always has to be somebody one. You just can't have 2 kings meeting each day and just fighting it out or discussing it calmly. You have to have someone that can say, look, it's got to go this way. And he ruled the entire empire, or over the empire, while Darius the Mede was number 2, and he ruled over the Chaldeans, but yet you will find he makes decisions for the entire empire, such as he will be tricked in chapter 6 into making a decree that becomes part of the law and cannot be changed. And the people that tricked him pay dearly for it, but still, it shows you he was making decisions on a national level that affected everybody. Daniel 5:29, then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet and put a chain of gold about his neck and made a proclamation concerning him that he should be the 3rd ruler in the kingdom. And so they gave him that privilege somewhere up above Belshazzar. We don't know that Nebuchadnezzar is dead, probably, but there's one king in between, Belshazzar's father, that's insignificant. Belshazzar probably was the second ruler, and the father or the granddad was first. The interesting thing is, when we get over into the other empire, it's not hard to understand when Daniel's made the third ruler of the kingdom, because there's Cyrus and there's Darius. So Darius the Great is not Darius the Mede, and we say, well, why not? That would have made Daniel 100 years plus, right around in that time. It doesn't mean he couldn't be alive, but probably not. And we read of nothing else concerning Darius the Great. And so Darius the Mede will be mentioned again, by the way, in Daniel 9, and it's important to know the people and where they fit on God's timeline. So thank you for your attention and your viewership on this. This might take some time for you to mull over, and maybe you want to go digging further, and I would applaud that. So may God bless you, and I'll see you in Daniel chapter 6 as we have a change of empires.